Ahoy! This is a very different video than I normally make, so let me explain who all these people are. I'm in kind of two groups right now on the internet. I mean, on this YouTube channel, you're expecting to see Outer Wilds modding content, but a lot of people watching this are probably not here for that. I also spend a lot of time in the Club Penguin Zero community for the past few months, practically since it launched, and I've participated in a number of interesting things. And today I'm going to talk about the history and development of Burg's Buyout. It's going to take me a little bit to do so, and I'm sorry I don't have a fancy video or anything, so you're getting a PowerPoint. So to everyone that regularly watches me, if you don't care about Club Penguin, I'll see you later. Modding recap coming out soon. Those of you that are here for Burg's Buyout, hello, this is what I sound like. The penguin that wears the cake on his head. So this is going to be everything that I could think of to say about Burg's Buyout, its development, and kind of its legacy, I guess. There's no way we can cover everything because it was just too much too quick. But hopefully this will be enough to catch anyone up on what this is and what actually happened for those like 3 weeks. So first I need to answer a few questions to get everyone up to speed if you have no idea what I'm talking about. Who is this Burg? What's Zero Nation? What is Club Penguin Zero actually? So let me address each of those one at a time before we get into Burg's Buyout proper. And that's me. Hi, that's me in the bottom left. That's actually a very realistic picture of me in real life. I'm actually a penguin now. So Club Penguin Zero is a new CPPS that launched in late 2025. And I started playing during that New Horizons party when people were just getting into it and it had gotten out of the like beta testing phase. And right now I think it has over 40,000 penguins, I believe. So a good amount of players have logged in, and that's been really fun to experience. CPZ is starting from the beginning of the Club Penguin story and telling it in slightly different ways and putting their own little twists on it. So it's been a lot of fun. So Zero Nation is a group of players that have like a smaller community, about 1,000 players, and it hosts fan events and little competitions and things. And then they also help make guides for things that you might have questions on. So if you're trying to get a certain stamp or a pin, or you're looking for the secrets in the different catalogs, they got you covered. So it's a niche within a niche, if I could say so. And that brings us to Burg himself. So I created Burg as kind of a joke, but kind of like a, the game's kind of dead right now. What can I do to help out? And so I just made up this character and I posted this picture that you see here on the right onto the Discord server. As you know, just, hey, nothing's going on right now. I made a little scavenger hunt. We thought it was so fun that we did it a couple more times, and I ended up developing a simple website called Burg's Camp. It's technically just a GitHub page. Don't get too worked up over it. And Burg's kind of this like pseudo mascot for Zero Nation specifically now. I think some of the regular non-Zero Nation players have heard of Burg by now. He's just kind of a character that just pops in, mostly whenever he's hosting one of these scavenger hunt events. So you have this character now, and the question is like, what are you gonna do with him now that he exists? And that brings us to Burg's Buyout. I've always made little like HTML5 games for a very long time, and I'd kind of gotten the itch to make another one. And with me having this recognizable character, a number of people that know who this is, and a place where I can host whatever I make, it was just the perfect storm for me to make something. So let's talk a little bit about designing Burg's Buyout. I wanted to make a clicker game just because like I just find them fascinating. Like Cookie Clicker is such a fascinating game. It all started with the game design document in which I wrote down all of the important things that the game needed to do. And this is important for setting the scope of the game and getting a good idea of what all it needs to do. It helps you see all the moving parts. And you can see the target audience is specifically Zero Nation fans. That's who the game is specifically made for. The premise of the game is, at the time that I was making this, in the story of Club Penguin Zero, Rockhopper's ship had gotten a wreck. So I was like, oh, what if the storyline of the game is you're trying to raise coins to help him repair his ship? And I was like, Burg is a member of Rockhopper's crew, so it would work out well. You hire penguins to play different mini games, and then as they play the mini games, they earn you coins and then use those coins to invest more. You know, it's a clicker game. I wanted to make this game short and very casual, unlike pretty much every other clicker out there that tries to be as intense and just throw all these numbers at you and make it overcomplicated on purpose. I didn't want that because I knew that the popularity wave of me making a dinky little game was not going to last that long. So I wanted something you could sit down and play in a day or two. And then I also wanted it to just be filled with references and gags and all kinds of stuff. Clicker games by themselves don't have a ton of gameplay, and some of the fun is just seeing what happens next. But I wanted the fun of this to be like, hey, here's a game centered around a game you already like. Look at all these funny jokes and references that we can discuss and laugh about. So that was the general idea of it before I even started writing any code. I should mention that this was not the first clicker game I'd made. When I was in college, I made a game called Duck Make Bread for my ex-girlfriend. Her favorite animal is a duck, so I made her a game all about collecting ducks and having them make bread. It featured me making duck sounds as well, which I'm sure at the time she liked. I learned a lot even just from this simple build here. The UI is gross, but like at least it's kind of legible. So you can already kind of see the DNA from this game that made it into Burg's Buyout. Okay, so what is the actual gameplay loop gonna be? This is a great thing to start with as you're building your game design document. And fortunately, clicker games, it's really straightforward until you get to the mechanics that are specific to your game. So they start by clicking the coin, they earn coins from that, and then they use it to purchase things on the right side of the screen. So you can see Hydro Hopper there is for 15 coins. I also knew that I wanted Puffles to be a part of the game. I had just finished playing Elite Penguin Force on the DS not too long before I made this, so I was thinking about all the Elite Puffles and the cool things they can do. So I thought it would be fun to have some where you have one equipped at a time and it gives you a buff, and then swapping off of those can lead to like combos and fun things like that. So not unlike the Dragon Skills or the Golden Cookies Cookie Clicker proper. And then once you've reached 1 billion coins, you purchase the Migrator, and that's how you win the game. So I wanted to show you some of the code that I wrote for this because I know people have been curious about that. I will say all of this is open source. It's all available on GitHub. You can just go and look at the code yourself. I am totally self-taught, so all my code is a mess, but it's kind of glorious to see in the year of 2026, I would like to say. So most of the logic is with JavaScript using the jQuery library. Most mechanics run through a single set interval and executes every 1/10 of a second. And in this game, I count those as ticks. So if you've ever played Minecraft, a tick happens once every 20th of a second, so 20 times a second. This one happens 10 times a second. And I mentioned here the math is not calculated every tick, but the display is updated every tick. So every 1/10 of a second, everything on the screen moves, but I'm not making any rigorous calculations every single tick. On the right side here, you can see this function start game loop. It creates an interval and it checks a bunch of things. On line 102, it earns coins. The player's coins per tick second times the coins per tick second mult. So if you have a multiplier, it multiplies those two values together and earns you those coins every tick. You can see it also increments the time played. The time played, there's nothing fancy about that. It's just every time this loop fires off, it increases that number by 1. As you can see, when it hits 300, which is 30 seconds, it saves your game. So the game saves every 30 seconds. Then it checks some things with the mascots to see if they are still operating. We can talk about the mascots later. And then it updates a ton of the display stuff. Things for Puffles, your coin goal, which if I recall properly has to do with your Ascension box. But again, we'll talk about that later. So this is the actual like engine that powers the game. A lot of other calculations happen off of this interval, but every time this interval fires is when you technically earn coins. All right, here is just an interesting function. This is the display number function. This is the function that almost every number runs through before it gets put on the actual screen. So you can see at the top on line 391, I just have an array with a bunch of number names. And then the logic here, starting at line 406, 407, it loops through and divides it by 1,000 to figure out how many steps down that list to move. And then you can see near the bottom, it looks like line 414. Sorry, I'm in the way of it. If it loops too many times, it just returns the words too many. So if a number gets over a sextillion, which would be a septillion, it just gives up. It doesn't even bother. Here's another one I made. This one is display time. It's another function. You input a number of seconds, it spits out all of the timestamps that you see in the game. So how long you've been playing, how long it took you to get 100%, runs through this function here. There's probably a much easier way to do these past two functions, but it's kind of fun. This is an easier problem to crunch through, so it's a good like break from some of the other stuff you have to overcome when you're writing code. Reset game. This function fires whenever you go to the options and reset your progress to start the game over. You'll notice at the top, there's a confirm, would you like to reset your game? And if you say true, it clears the data off your browser, because the save data is just saved into your browser. It's not like on a server or anything. And then it sets the variable player back to the default statistics. So you can see, you can kind of go through there and look at what everything is. I was gonna do a fancy save data system, but instead I just stringified this object, shoved it to the browser, and then when it grabs your save data, it just grabs that string, parses it back out, and that's all it does. I think that there's so many things that could go wrong with that, but it's worked so far. Biggest function in the game is called update display, because there's so many things in the game that have to be constantly updated. But here's a small fraction of it. This updates that center column. You can see I have it in that red box in the upper right of the screen. All the statistics are wired through here. So at the top, you can see it calculates how many penguins you've hired. That was a suggestion by somebody because there's an achievement that you obtain by having a certain amount of penguins. So I just added that in so it would tell you how many there are. And it calculates your time played and just displays a bunch of information back to back. If you have a full completion time, it adds that in. That's on line 118, 119, 120. So if you've gotten 100% of the game, it generates that. And then you can see there's a big block of code starting at 121 if you've ascended before. So if you've opened the box, it runs that extra display stuff. And that's all the stuff that's, you know, specifically for Ascension related statistics. A little bit more here, gamedata.js. This is a big file that has not really code, just variables of information. So you can see that top piece is for upgrades. So you can see there's the jackhammer upgrade, and then 2 of the upgrades for Hydro Hopper. For example, if you look at that Hydro Hopper one, like on line 72, it gives you the name, a description, what emoji to use, how many coins it costs, and then the requirement. The requirement is what you have to do before the upgrade actually appears in the list. So here it says you need a building, and the building is building 0. Building's another name for minigames. That's the term that Cookie Clicker uses. It calls them buildings. You need 0, which is Hydro Hopper, and you need to own 10 of them. Once you own 10 Hydro Hoppers, this upgrade appears in your list. Then you can see the effect is it multiplies the output by 2 on the next line. And then the bottom section, the mini games, you can see Hydro Hopper, bean counters, ice fishing. I wanted to fill the game with lots of goofy stuff, and because the game is so simple, it's just easy to do that. The music track that I chose for the game is Paris Saint-Germain, which is the music for the fishing mini game in Club Penguin. I just thought, not only is that my favorite mini game, but it also just fit the vibe for Burg's Buyout so perfectly. When you buy the Migrator, Rockhopper's ship, Burg puts on these shades. That render was also made by Samuel. And then we added this postcard to the Burg site. He made that as well. And then I filled the game with tons of flavor text. Flavor text is dialogue or just written text in games that don't actually add anything. Like, they're not instructional. They're just goofy stuff. With almost every minigame and upgrade in the game, I wanted there to be an actual description that informs you as a player what you're supposed to do with that, and then flavor text that's just whatever I feel like putting in there. And that ended up being great because that was a great place to put in Easter eggs or references, which was fun. So on April 14th, I gave the initial playtest to the Zero Nation staff, and I started the development on April 2nd. So that was like less than 2 weeks. I had a working version. Samuel, I sent him the first build before anyone else, and he found some like critical issues immediately. It was very funny how quickly the game broke. So I was able to fix those before I actually gave it to Zero Nation, the staff, and they loved it. They really loved it. They sent me these long messages about how fun they thought it was, how creative it was, and with tons of suggestions too. And some of their suggestions were so obvious that I was like, yes, I have to implement those immediately. So they were a huge help, and they were so encouraging and willing to jump in and do things for me to make it even better. So that was a super fun time. So I worked with the staff team. We decided, yes, we did want to release this. It would be a fun thing for Zero Nation to enjoy. So we prepared for the big day. So Silver made the game's logo. Comedian made the game's trailer, which was just phenomenal. I was blown away by it. And then we premiered it on YouTube on the day that it launched, with Burg visiting on the island. So you can see, here's a screenshot that Burg sent me. And it's so fun that this was during the Save the Migrator project. Like, all the themes just work together so well. So we launched it on April 23rd, and the reception was really good. It was very positive. And there was a hilarious dialogue on the left side here with Jeff. Jeff is like the leading person on Club Penguin Zero. He was very confused about what we were doing, and he said he would send me the Boat Blasters files, which, Jeff, if you're listening, I'll take those files. I can't do anything with them, but it would be an amazing joke. On the right side, Sora, who is very well known in the Club Penguin Zero community and is also a staff member, and was very encouraging too the whole time. Then in the middle here, a group of players started speedrunning the game. I wasn't really expecting that, and I had to add in some of the speedrunning stuff in later because I realized it kind of took off. Lots of people were trying to beat the game as quickly as possible, which was very fun. A couple more things. Sora did an announcement, I think based around a patch that Club Penguin Zero was getting, and he mentioned Burg's Buyout. So it was mentioned in an announcement on the big server, which was so cool. That was a pretty cool moment. The staff and I freaked out when that happened. On the right side there, you can see Silver sent some screenshots, and Arctic visited, and they were chatting about Burg. And at the bottom, Rockhopper was also chatting about Burg as well. So the mascots learned about this random penguin that I just made up one day. So this is kind of where suddenly Burg rose to stardom. Well, at least for like a week or two. A lot of people were now familiar with this random character I made up, and a lot of people played Burg's Buyout, and I was constantly getting questions about it, more and more stuff. But I didn't want it to be over just yet, because I still had a bunch of ideas for what the game could do and where I think it should go next, which leads us to the box update. So there were a few issues that I wanted to fix with the game. Like I mentioned, I had a bunch of leftover ideas, but I also didn't want to ruin the core experience. There were speedrunners that were used to how the game was designed, and I didn't want to break the balance. I also wanted a more satisfying ending. When you bought the migrator, nothing would happen. It would just say, congrats, like you won. And Burg would like wear his shades, but nothing else appeared on screen. Nothing really happened other than like a sound effect and an achievement. So I wanted to make a more satisfying ending to the game. And then also players wanted Ascensions and Prestige, which it's a cookie clicker like clone, I guess so. Clicker games are just prone to that, I suppose. I didn't think the game was long enough for an Ascension Prestige, but sure, why not? I came up with the outer box dimension. The box dimensions explored a lot in Club Penguin, but I was like, ooh, what if there was like a far-reaching box dimension? So when you complete the main quest, the player can now enter a box that leads to the outer box dimension, and allowed me to add post-game content that was random and didn't match the playstyle of the original game. Cookie clicker, you have the ascended upgrades after you ascend. And here it's kind of the same thing. This picture I have only shows the upgrade in the middle, but when you purchase that one, you unlock more nodes. You unlock more upgrade nodes, and it adds all kinds of wacky stuff. I purposefully did not make any of it make sense and just kind of did random stuff, and I think people really loved that. I think they loved how just you never knew what was going to happen next, which I think is like one of the best things I can give my players for how simple this game is. Here's just an example of one of the pieces of code. This is when you click on the box to enter the box dimension. It asks you, are you sure you want to open the box? And then it loads up stuff, it plays sound effects, it pauses the main game. So it pauses that big interval I talked about earlier. Then it calculates your new doubloons, it displays everything. And then around line 21, you can see that there is a 1 out of 5 chance for Herobrine to just appear in the outer box dimension. That's based on a bug in Club Penguin 0 if you play on the browser version. Sometimes a blue penguin named Herobrine will just appear. It's a bug that I think the devs left in the game on purpose. But you can see he has a 1 in 5 chance to appear. And then at the bottom it plays the animation where the box like shrinks away. Here's an example of what the Ascension upgrades look like with their code, kind of similar to the upgrades and minigames we saw earlier. You can tell that the requirement line has a different upgrade in it. So for example, this Achievements Plus upgrade, we see the second one. Its requirement is upgrade 0, which is actually just the one before it. So that's how I controlled the node logic. They aren't tied together in any way. They just look for a different upgrade. And if that one's been purchased, then this one appears on the screen as well. You can also see they each have a location. The location of these upgrade nodes are stored in the data of that upgrade. So if you just added your own ascended upgrade to this list, you could just say what X and Y coordinate you want to be at and it'll appear. The progression of the box update is through the iceberg. So the iceberg, these penguins randomly spawn every time you open it up, and every achievement you earn attracts more penguins. And once you reach 34 penguins, you're able to tip the iceberg. And the code I have here on the right is what runs when you're successfully able to do it. That line 54, 55, 56 saves your completion time if it's your first time tipping the iceberg for the 200% completion. And it stops the game loop, it resets the sound, and then it like shakes and stuff, and then it moves on to the ending sequence, which is everything that happens after the screen shakes. I wanted the game to have a satisfying and clear ending. Completing this update was a big moment for me, and Starry, that made this artwork, was able to capture that moment perfectly, I felt like. This had been like taking up all of my brain space for so long. Like, I made the game in a couple weeks, and then I made the box update in a couple weeks. I needed this to have a sense of finality, if for no one but myself. Like, I just needed this to be over. And while I loved working on it, and the hype was so much fun, you need to close the book on projects in order to mentally get to the next one. And so this was a very important moment for me. And you can see Starry also littered this postcard with references to other important people in the Club Penguin 0 space. I haven't heard many people talk about the ending because I guess it's not funny or anything. It's very like serious and kind of mellow, but I think I did that on purpose. Like, it's a clicker game. The box update's chaotic with all this extra junk on the screen, and you're cycling between the different puffles, and now you have 2 puffles. The mascots appear. Like, it's so chaotic. I wanted the ending to be calm and quiet, and to let you know that you have finished the game. Like, this is it. And hopefully that was also a satisfying ending for people for the Save the Migrator event as well. So here's a few things that I learned making this game, just to kind of wrap up. First thing, I want to remind you, it's important to make art for the people you want to engage with. It is very important to create art for yourself. I don't think people do that enough. There is so much value in that, but there's also value in, if you are brutally honest with yourself, do you want people to engage with the thing you're creating? You do, well then you need to make it for them. I made Burg's Buyout because I thought it would be really fun, and I thought it'd be a great way for me to give to the community. And then all the patches, the bug fixing, the box update, all of that was specifically to thank the community for how encouraging they were during the time of Burg's Buyout. So if you want people to engage with the things you make, you have to make it for them. It's the only way it happens. The second thing is playtesting is not optional. You have to playtest stuff before it goes to the public. Samuel found a lot of stuff in the initial thing, and then before it went public, the staff had other suggestions that I can't imagine the game being successful without. And then the box update. Some of it was way too confusing, and so some of the playtesting weeded some of that out as well. Mostly because I just had a hard time explaining the mechanics of the box update. But make sure you're testing your stuff before it goes public. And then thirdly, this is actually a phrase that Google used to use, which was reward the user with a search. When I think about what Burg's Buyout is and what it's trying to do, I don't owe anybody anything. And none of the people that played my game owed me anything. So why should they bother playing it? They don't have to. Well, I just made it fun. The reward for taking the time to stop by the Discord server and check out Burg's Buyout and spend time with it is to constantly reward them. It's fun. That's what I'm giving them. And in return, why would I bother making it? Well, for people to enjoy and for people to have another thing to connect with. So if you're making something for other people, maybe don't immediately make it difficult to access or engage with the thing you make. Just reward them for being there. All right, that's all I got on Burg's Buyout. Hopefully that was satisfying and thorough enough to explain a lot of things about the game. I know there's so many other mechanics in it I could go into, but it would just get boring, and this is already long enough. I am actively working on my next Burg related content. I don't have anything to share with it right now though, but hopefully you enjoyed. If you want to play this game for yourself, I'll put a link to all that stuff in the description of the video. If you have any other questions for me, YouTube comments or find me in Discord. My DMs are always open if you want to chat about any of this or if you have any other questions as well. All right, y'all have a great day.